what's going on? This is David Avalon here with my co-host Robert Drysdale after a long hiatus.
Yes, good to be back.
So we're back here again for another episode of Breaking the Guard. We have a lot of catching up to do because I haven't seen Robert probably like in a month at least.
I know, this guy's on vacation. He's the only person enjoying a vacation at the moment is David Avalon. He's at the Keys for what, 3 weeks?
Well, I was in Miami first for like 9-10 days. I actually did NRA training camp with my brother. He's a training counselor with the NRA, so he has all the different certifications. So I actually got my basic pistol, personal protection in the home, personal protection outside the home certifications as an instructor.
Oh, nice.
So yeah, it's a cool course. There's a lot of stuff that you'll learn like doing it. So it's something that I'll probably start doing here as well.
Nice, nice.
Here in Nevada, you have to have those 3 certifications in order to do a concealed carry permit course.
You have to do the course to have a concealed carry permit.
Well, no, to be able to give people a concealed carry permit.
Okay, so you can do that now.
I can do that now.
You gonna hook me up or what?
Well, I have to go now, and I have to submit my curriculum to the sheriff's department.
Dave kind of owes me. Like, he strategically set up like a podcast right when he knew he had a truckload of mats coming over. Tactfully, very smart. He's like, "Hey, Rock, can you want to do a podcast 11:30 a.m. sharp?" I get here. It's like, "Oh, by the way, I got some mats coming over. Can you help me carry them?" I guess I owe Dave because like there's like a few months ago, like I'm driving down the street, I see a piano on the street, and it has a big sign on it. It says, "I am working, take me home." I'm like, okay, deal. I was driving a truck at the time, so I'm like 2 blocks away from your house. I'm like, it's Dave. Hey, Dave, you got a minute? You ran over there.
That's a weird coincidence, huh? That you had
super.
the truck.
I never had it. My car was at the shop. I had a rental. What happened to be a truck. That never happens. You get a truck for a rental.
Yeah.
But that's what they gave me. And I'm driving down by Dave's house, and there's a piano on the street. And I'm like, perfect. I'm taking it. And that shit was heavy, though.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, and it works perfect. I'm surprised someone would give it away because it's working, perfectly well. But yeah, so I guess we're even.
Yeah, and now I've been getting so I did the NRA training camp first. That was like a week long, and then I went to the Keys, did some scuba diving, and ate out like every night for 2 weeks. So that was pretty cool. And I've never eaten so many steaks.
Good for you, man.
I was eating like porterhouses. Like I had 2 porterhouses, a prime rib, New York strips, filet mignons. Only gained 1 pound.
You didn't?
I only gained 1 pound.
Oh, that's not bad at all.
Yeah.
Well, meat doesn't put a lot of weight on you because it's such an effort for your body to digest it. Like I always tell these people when they're eating, like people assume that 1,000 calories is always equal to 1,000 calories, and it's not true.
Yeah,
because
macros,
if you eat 1,000 calories of Oreos versus 1,000 calories of steak, the Oreos your body absorbs very easily without much effort from your digestive tract, right? Because it's just pure sugar. Whereas a steak may have the same amount of calories, but it's a lot more work for your body to digest it. So you're absorbing like a smaller amount of those calories.
Yeah, I was actually just talking to my girlfriend about it, and essentially people say like how much protein you should have in one sitting because your body can only absorb a certain amount, and it depends on what you mean by the word absorb. Yeah. Your body absorbs all of it. Now, what it uses it for is different things. So like for like muscle synthesis and repair, it's somewhere around 30, 40 grams. Again, it depends on how big you are and whatnot.
Yeah,
but
genetics, all of that, yeah.
Somewhere around there, it will be used for rebuilding muscle.
Yeah.
And then the rest of it is just going to be for energy.
Because there's only so much your body can absorb. But see, like I've heard like conflicting things because like bodybuilders will tell you like X amount of grams of protein per day or whatever, right? And then I've heard the opposite. Your body can only absorb so much. But again, with the amount of steroids they take and plus the amount how much they work out, I'm sure that changes everything. Like you probably have like a natural threshold of how much your body can absorb. But with the steroids, you add to that the fact that these guys are like working out every day hard.
Yeah.
It probably pushes that threshold of how much protein your body is actually going to need.
It's also
I wouldn't know for sure, but I imagine that'd be the case.
The timing is a factor too. Like if you see, like you can watch some of these guys like The Mountain, and they're eating at like 4 a.m.
Oh yeah, they wake up to eat. Yeah.
They're eating like every 2 to 4 hours.
That's crazy.
So and they're getting protein in every meal. So it's not like they eat like 200 grams of protein in one sitting and then just they're done for the day. Like it's spread out because there's a timing. Like they have a better understanding of it, but essentially after like a 3-hour window is like a peak time to start getting more protein in. So they do That's just an example. I'm not sure the exact number, but they'll time their meal schedule accordingly. And like when you're a giant like that, it's a full-time job eating that much to maintain that size, because like your body doesn't want to be that big. Yeah. It's not efficient.
It's unnatural. Yeah.
Yeah, because like you have to consume so much energy.
You have to trick your body to get that big.
Yeah, like you have to constantly work your body so hard just to maintain that type of size. It's not like, oh, it's hard to gain weight like 200 pounds. Like when you're trying to be like 350 and stuff like that and jacked, it's a lot of work. It's not like something that you want to do to yourself unless you're about that life.
No, the thing, the issue I have with that is it turns like anyone who's like too into anything diet wise, right? Whether you're trying to get really lean or really big, whatever the case, it turns into a part-time job. It's like your life, it goes around your diet, and I just don't want to live like that. I respect the hell out of people who do that, like meal prep, and they count their carbs, and like they know exactly, that's a tremendous amount of discipline, Dave. I've never had that, and like I don't ever want to live like that, but I admire people who do, but I just don't see myself, I always cut weight, but it was never like, you have a vague idea of what you can and can't eat. You're not really counting calories. But I missed weight once my whole life, so I feel like I've always done a good job. But like some of these guys, man, they're like, they're on timer. They have a timer, right? Like I have to eat every 2-3 hours or whatever. They wake up in the middle of the night, like to drink a protein shake. Yeah. Man, that's legit, man. Because if I do that, I probably won't go back to sleep.
Yeah, for sure. I wouldn't. I do count my calories still to this day.
You do?
Yeah.
It's a lot of work, man.
It's not
you
that
get
much.
used to it.
You get used to it. It's pretty easy, especially like with the apps that you have now. Like you just push a button and it kind of knows what you're eating already. Yeah. So you just that, and you get better at eyeballing things, because I know now that I see like this size. This is like a 6 ounce of steak or meat. You have a better idea, and you have scales and stuff. And then again, it's also an estimated science. It's not exact. Yeah. Like when they give you like 4 ounces of chicken breast, it's 120 calories. That's an estimate, based on one chicken that they decided to test how much calories it has. So like people, if you're trying to get super exact with it, it's kind of silly. It's all just general. As long as you're in the ballpark, you're probably within like 10 to 20% accuracy. You're good enough. And I don't know, like I said, I was out there eating like an animal. But I kept to my workout schedule. So that's the one thing I feel like I've done differently now, is that when I plan the vacation, I'm like, okay, where are the gyms? Okay, there's one here, there's one there. Okay. And now that since she's been about it since I met her, so it's like the first time we worked out together on vacation. But,
nice.
And we're there for like 2 or 3 hours going at it. And then afterwards we just eat. So it was a nice trip, but it's good to be back.
I need that. But yeah, man, no, and we got lots to talk about. I'm trying to think here where to start.
Well, I wanted to hear about the closed guard.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
I'll begin by apologizing for being late. We had, I'll give you a brief rundown of where we're at, but because we announced it in March that we were going to be done, releasing this summer. And we didn't have a date in the summer. We were vague about it because there are some moving pieces that we are not in our control, right? But when we announced this in March, we were missing some copyright permissions from some images that we wanted to use, because the copyright issue is a very scary one. There are attorneys that make a living from like just trying to find someone using something they're not supposed to be using, and then they'll sue you to oblivion. Yeah, man, like we didn't expect that we were not going to be able to get rights to some of these images, soon enough. But I think COVID shut down a lot of libraries and museums. So, like some of them, for example, there are museums and libraries in Japan that are permanently, they're closed. Like you can't get a hold of them. So it's like one of those things. So you have an option. We either go through with the film and miss out on some of these images, or we wait a little longer. We waited this long and make it the film we want it to be for posterity, right? And I feel like we waited this long. I would rather err on the side of quality over rushing something just because we promised it, And I mean, it's wishful thinking that we thought we'd be ready in the summer, given all the moving pieces. But, it is, the good news is that it is happening. It's not one of those things we're going to quit on. We're very close. We have a cut of the film, but the copyright issue, we're missing we're tweaking some, because it's very difficult to get the narrative to flow because you have so many different topics and they all overlap. So it's very difficult to create a narrative where you will follow a chronological order, but if you're too chronological, it stops making sense. Yeah. You have to there's some back and forth going on because you have to talk about the characters. But the characters don't fit chronologically because they're a part of the story throughout. So where exactly do they fit? and they begin here, but they have a big moment here. So we can't be too chronological. All right, so it's not always easy to make, because we have so many stories that are interrelated. So it's difficult to stick to. Like if we were only telling the story of immigration, or only the story of Helio Gracie, or only the story of Mitsui Maeda, or only the story of Kodokan, it'd be easy.
Yeah.
But we're talking about all these things.
Yeah, a lot of moving parts. And you were in Japan, you were in Brazil, so you were all over the place. But I don't think anybody's going to fault you on delaying. It's funny because I saw on Instagram they postponed the ADCC trials in the U.S.
Yeah.
And people were complaining like, oh, you guys need to be more professional. And like, dude, the NFL, the NBA,
Everything.
PFL, UFC, dude, the world economy got delayed, and you're gonna fault ADCC for a postponement.
I know.
It's like, come on, dude. Everybody's been messed up by this, So like, your thing getting delayed. It's
most people are supportive. I made a post a while ago talking about it, right? Yeah. Most people are supportive. There's like a couple guys like, oh, you guys got no credibility, and there's a part of me that wants to block them. It's like, I don't care if you don't watch the film now. But you got to be diplomatic, and like I ask people to understand, because a lot of it really isn't in our power. Some of it could be blamed on my lack of experience. But I would rather, like I said, I'd rather err on the side of doing something that's archival and people will be able to reference 50 years from now. And I think I mentioned this before. I don't think this can be redone, because these old masters, these grandmasters are all dying. We've lost 4 of them since we've done filming. Oh wow! 4 of them have passed away. Just to give you an idea of how we were, man, the timing of this thing was perfect.
So you got to meet all the people you were going after?
Obviously, had this been done 20 years ago, we would have even more grandmasters. But my point is, the first generation of practitioners, they're all dying. So once those are gone, we're going to have the second generation, which is less and less. Because it's less and less interesting the closer it gets to where we're at, right? Yeah. So the further back we can go, the better. So that's why I think that it's a key moment for a film like this. And because we have the research that came within after 2012 largely. That's when the research came about. And then that coincided with the grandmasters reaching a very advanced age. It was a very small window for us to do this, right? And we were right there. And it was an accident. It wasn't intentional. It was only later that I put 2 and 2 together. But so I think that this is why it's so important that we do a good job, that we don't err on the side of rushing things, right? Just because some people are really eager to see it. And because I truly believe that this is something people are going to be watching 40, 50 years from now. Like, when people want to learn the history of jiu-jitsu and you don't want to read 20 books, you watch a documentary.
Yeah, I think it'll be awesome to watch for sure. But like, this project was privately funded, right?
Correct.
So that's the other thing. I mean, people can wait. I know some people had gripes about other documentaries because they were crowdfunded, and then I get that.
And we're getting some of that flack, yeah.
Yeah, but like, it's not the same thing. You're privately funded. This is your own venture,
Well, I'm not funding it. I'm not rich. FYI.
But I mean, your investors,
my investor's surprisingly patient. Like, he understands. Like, every now and then he'll message me, and I just tell him the truth, And he's very understanding. We're way behind schedule, but he's very understanding, especially with COVID now. So they actually wanted me to fly out there last weekend. I had a Marcelo's fight, so I couldn't go. And I'm not sure it's easy to get in and out of Russia right now. I don't want to get quarantined in somewhere in God knows where. So it might wait a little bit longer until it's, because they want me to go, because they want to I've sent them cuts of the films of what we have, but I told them I wrote a book and I'm gonna send them a copy in Russian. I'm gonna Google Translate. I can't translate to Russian, but I'll give them a copy because I talk about them and how they funded the film too. So it'd be a nice gift. But we're making moves, man. The book is out. It's going to print today or tomorrow, and will be on Amazon very soon. Right now, it's on our website.
Nice.
We had a pre-sale, so the pre-sale is going to end in a week or so, whatever. And I'll give you a copy. And then, I think that the book, we were able to get in more detail, because no matter how much you talk about a film or how much you have information you have in a film, it's still 90 minutes, right? There's a reason why the people who read a book and then they read the adaptation, they're always somewhat disappointed. Yeah. And it's not because the adaptation is necessarily bad. It's just because there's so much more in the book. It's so much more depth to it, right? So I feel like the book is a very good companion to the film if you're really interested in the story. If you're just like a casual observer, you're like, yeah, whatever, I like to learn who Helio Gracie is. It's crazy. Like, a lot of the young generation, they don't even know who Helio Gracie is, which is nuts to me. But
that is wild.
Yeah, a lot of my blue belts, like, they've never even heard of him. But so the documentary will do that. But like, if you're really into martial arts history and you love jiu-jitsu and you want to find out something about how BJJ and MMA developed in Brazil, I think the book is going to give you a little more information. You know, I mean, for sure it will, because you can expand on all those topics in more detail. Right?
I think what you were saying about those old masters essentially passing away, kind of sad. I mean, in a sense, it's great that you were able to capture, I guess, some moments with them that you can pass down to everybody else, because it's kind of like when you watch like Star Wars and all the Jedis are dying off. It's like you're losing that history. You know what I mean? So these are like BJJ Jedis.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Yeah, you know what's so sad is that, you know, I understand, like, people, if you're into sports and martial arts, you're far more interested in the athletic ability of that person, more in the lessons that the older generations can teach you, right? So someone like, you know, has been training jiu-jitsu for 67 years. They're like, they're an encyclopedia of wisdom, not just technique. I'm talking wisdom, life wisdom, like experience. And I always mess around. I mentioned this in the book. Like, these guys are me in the future. This is a window into the future. Like, you look at these guys, you might feel like, oh man, like that sucks. And like, that's you in a few years, man. It's true. That's you in a few years. So to me, it was interesting because I wanted to pick their brain and see if I could learn something from them life-wise. Because I wonder who I was going to be like. Am I going to be like Robson Gracie, Henzo's father, or Armando Vridit, or this other guy, João Alberto Barreto, and all these Jedis? And you wonder, which one am I going to be most like? Right? And there was something sad about it because they were so happy to be interviewed. And it was almost like, wait a second, man. I'm the privileged one here. Yeah. Like, I get to sit down with a living legend. Like, these people are the founders of BJJ and MMA, right? The very first practitioners. And they're so happy to tell their story. Like, it's not that they've never been interviewed before, but it probably a long time goes by before anyone cares about listening to what they have to say. And Armando, he still taught class every day, the guy with the beard. Yeah. 2 students in the middle of the jungle outside of Brasilia. 2 students. He drove to the mat. It was like the most beautiful. It's probably like the most incredible experience of my life, other than, you know, like having children. Like, it was one of the most amazing experiences of my life. Post-production, I hated every aspect of it. It sucked. But the filming of it was so rich. Like, spending time with these guys and getting to pick their brain and seeing how, I don't know, there was this peace to them. It was a very beautiful thing, man. Like, it was just one of those things where I think in life you have these moments, right? We change, we go ambition, you know, and then there's an acceptance of what you can and can't do and who you really are and what your limitations are, right? And you can see with these guys, because they're in their 80s and 90s, they're past that threshold. They're like, there's this peace about them. They're perfectly happy. Like, if they die tomorrow, they don't say it, but like, they would be like, I don't want to die tomorrow. Yeah. I feel like I got a lot to live still, you know. But with them, it was something very peaceful about. They were very proud about the life they lived, and they were perfectly happy moving on. If they have to die with, like, the next day, they'd be like, perfectly fine, you know. And I was, man, I hope I can be like that one day, you know. And it's just, it was a lesson. It was a very spiritual experience in a lot of ways, but it was a lesson for life more than jiu-jitsu, you know. So that's probably what I took the most from it. There's a little bit about that in the book. I talk about that as well, but that was an amazing experience, man. Now I just got to finish the film.
Yeah, man. Well, I think that's going to be a treat for everybody. I know I'm looking forward to it. I've seen some of the clips way back when you were starting, and they were very intriguing because it's a lot of stuff that it's a side of the title's great in Closed Guard because it fits perfect what you're saying. So everything is kind of been held back. You know, it's only one person's telling their version of history. I think nowadays we can understand that better with the advent of, you know, quote unquote fake news. Yeah. And people can see now, like, you know, all because it's on the book or because it's being told to you from a TV personality doesn't make it real, you know? Or that's just one version of someone's interpretation of events. And there's so many others out there.
Many different perspectives, and they're conflicting a lot of times. But it's called Closed Guard for another reason. It's not only because the story has been closed. Yeah. Because it's interesting about the Closed Guard position. That was no man's land when the Brazilians, particularly the Gracie family, they're battling the judokas. They can't hang on their feet. They're getting thrown left, right, and center. Like the judokas are constantly fighting for a rule set that starts standing and has points, like the traditional judo rule set. Yeah. Brazilians are like, no, you can pull guard, no time limit, no points, because they're moving in a direction where they feel they have a chance at winning, defeating the Japanese, right? So Closed Guard was that middle ground. Because the Japanese are very skilled on the ground. It's not that they didn't know ground. You know, judo became less and less ground oriented over the years. But during that 1930s, 40s, there's a lot more newaza in judo. And what happened was the closed guard was where Brazilians held their ground. This is where I can hang against you, close the guard on you. I don't open, we draw. Oh, I really won because I didn't get tapped, right? So it was a strategical thing. So closed guard was not, it has like that double meaning. This is where Brazilians were able to hold their ground against the Japanese long enough to create something that we now call Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. It's interesting, to me this is obvious because I grew up in Brazil, but most people in the US don't know this. No one in Brazil has ever called it Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. You probably know this. The term Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is an American invention. Either Americans or Brazilians invented it, but in the United States. It was in Brazil. Till this day, no one calls it Jiu-Jitsu Brasileiro. Yeah. People just don't call it. I refer to it in the book to make a distinction, because in the book I talk about after Royce Gracie, that's when BJJ exists. Before that, it's Judo / Jiu-Jitsu, because that's what they were doing. It was after IBJJF and Royce Gracie that what now we call BJJ came into being, because it has to do, the term is immediately associated with the spread of the sport around the world after Royce Gracie, right? But yeah, so then the name of the book is Open and Closed Guard. It's got that double meaning too, you know. But yeah, man, it's been great, man. Like a lot. I'm still learning. You know what I found out recently? You're gonna like this. There's a Brazilian researcher called Elton Silva, and he writes a book on the history of MMA in Brazil, and he's talking about the influence of capoeira in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And I'm like, how? At first, I'm like, there's no way. And when you start paying attention, he's got a lot of good points. If you watch Royce in the first UFC, how did he approach the clinch? With a stomp. Yeah. Capoeira then, right, was very different from capoeira now. I didn't know this, but capoeira then had takedowns and ground fighting. Capoeira changed a lot in the second half of the 20th century. It's a change in martial art. But back in the day in Brazil, in the first half of the 20th century, or like the later half of the 19th century, it was more MMA oriented. It was more street fighting, right? So they had takedowns. In fact, in Brazil, the double leg takedown has a name. It's called baiana. It's a capoeira move. It's basically a double leg. It's like not as clean as a wrestling double leg, but it's grab the leg, take you down. And in a lot of Brazilians till this day, they don't say double leg. They don't say morotegari, which is the judo version. They say baiana. It's very common. So the stomp, what's the other one? That technical stand-up we do in the warm-up, that's not judo. That came from capoeira. Yeah, because like capoeira, they have like this whole sequence they would do of kicking on the ground and standing back up if they have to. So that's where it came from. So you can see even like some of and then he has like a whole series of moves that are originally from capoeira from the first half of the 20th century that the Gracie Academy incorporated, and it made it its way into Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu that way. So it was just very interesting because you wouldn't think that capoeira would have had influenced, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and obviously catch wrestling. Yeah. Because the influence of catch wrestling is obvious. Like I said this before, like Brazilians say arme lock. They don't say jujigatami. Yeah. Arme lock, leggy lock. They didn't get that from the Japanese. Yeah. They got it from catch wrestlers, right? Traveling in the circus. So there's clearly more influences in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu than only judo. Right?
Yeah, I think that's probably covered also, but the judo also got from catch wrestling too, from what I understood. Is that right?
From Western wrestling. Yeah. So judo, it's funny because in my head, judo was something that, built on an ancient tradition that is much older than Western influence. Yeah. And judo really is a hybrid of Japanese traditions, like the two styles that Jigoro Kano practiced, the two rus, and then, sumo as well, but also Western wrestling. We borrowed a lot, even like the point system, like pinning the guy on the ground kind of thing. They got that from wrestling. So it was in fact wrestling that, I always thought that wrestling, for some reason I had that wrestlers had taken the kataguruma and made it the fireman's carry. Right. But it's in fact the other way around. So a lot of the throws from wrestling were absorbed into judo. And judo is also the syncretism of a lot of, not just Western techniques in terms of physical techniques, but philosophy, like ideas of education, like these sports, physical education, sports as a means of bettering the human. That's a Western idea. It's not a Japanese idea, but they borrowed that as well. One of the most impressive things Jigoro Kano does, it's just mind-boggling when you think about it. It created a space for all of us to have a job today. This is why Jigoro Kano is the most important figure in the history of martial arts, because what he did is really incredible. It was not done in the West. That's why in the West, our idea of martial arts is so different from Asian martial arts, because Jigoro Kano had a vision. He did it. He goes like this. We're going to turn something that is meant for killing, which is what a martial art is, into something that's educational for children. Now think about the gap between convincing, but because now we think it's common sense now that we go, yeah, martial arts is great for children. But the gap between convincing a parent that something that's meant for killing is a great idea for their child.
Yeah.
Like he bridged that gap. He convinced the Japanese Ministry of Education that, look, we're going to teach these kids how to fight, and that's going to be great for their education. At a time when they're trying to become westernized, they're trying to like leave their traditions behind. They're like, no, we got to be like the West is now, right? When you think about it, man, I talk about political genius.
It's a difficult thing to pull. It's kind of like, there's a lot of controversy here in the States, even with guns. You have people who are anti-Second Amendment, pro-Second Amendment. But like, for example, my brother's taught all his kids how to use guns.
Yeah.
And they're like,
it's a controversial issue, yeah.
Controversial, but at the same time, like, what's more dangerous? Somebody who doesn't know how to use something that's around, or someone that
knows how to use it?
It's kind of like if you don't teach people leg locks, and then you throw them into a match and they get into a leg lock, they're in a lot of problems now.
Yeah,
it's better that they know it, so it makes sense. But yeah, I could see how that'd be a big issue. If you're like, if it was martial arts was associated with war and killing, like, okay, we're gonna show this to little Timmy. It's like, whoa,
but we changed our perspective because now we associate martial arts with education. We don't associate it with war anymore.
No,
we don't associate it with killing and hurting people. We associate it with philosophy and improving on the human being and learning discipline.
And at its worst, sport.
Yeah. That's its most violent form. It's a sport
yeah.
with like a paramedic right there, a referee, tons of rules. And he creates that. You got to. That's one thing. Oh, Brazilians, they built off of something that was already there. They made some adaptation, less technical revolution. It was mostly cultural changes into what we call judo. Brazilians start calling it jiu-jitsu. Now later in the world, Brazilian jiu-jitsu. But who really created what we call martial arts was Jigoro. It's pretty amazing when you think about it. That's why he was not in the story originally in the documentary. But once I start coming to these realizations, I'm going, I can't leave this out. This is too incredible to leave him out, because we're going to start with the Japanese migrating to Brazil, right? Maeda amongst them, but not the first. But we just couldn't leave out this other. But then they got too broad. That's the other problem. So they got too big. So like, oh, what do we leave out now? So those some of the reasons why the film's been held back. But with the other thing I was going to talk about, this is one of those things I didn't come to the realization until very, very recently. And I wish I'd come to this conclusion earlier on, is that Mitsui Maeda, Konji Koma, has always been at the center of the story. There's no good reason for him to be at the center of the story. It's just that he always has been, so no one questions it. But when you think about it, he didn't do much. He's retired when he goes to Brazil. He doesn't have a lot of students. He hands off his class. He teaches some classes. He trains some Brazilians, and he kind of like takes a step back. That's the extent of his relationship to martial arts in Brazil. But he was famous. So his biggest contribution, and like people don't like, it's not a very popular position, but I believe that his biggest contribution to martial arts, jiu-jitsu, MMA, whatever, was that he lent his name, unwillingly, he lent his name to all these Brazilians who lacked credibility. They had zero credibility. In the middle of tons of Japanese immigrants coming over, what Brazilian is going to have credibility? If you want to learn martial arts, who are you going to learn it from? It's kind of like an American trying to teach jiu-jitsu. We were talking about that with the Keenan podcast.
Yeah.
And like Americans are immediately at a disadvantage, because if you have a Brazilian accent, it doesn't matter how good you are. Most of your clientele is going to presume that the Brazilian is better at jiu-jitsu. Right? Saying Thai guy, American guy teaching Thai, or a Thai teaching Thai boxing.
Yeah.
Immediately people think, oh, clearly the guy from Thailand knows more. And the same thing was happening in Brazil. Everyone presumed that the Japanese knew more. So how do these Brazilians gain credibility? Well, they have to associate themselves with the biggest name in the industry, which was Mitsui Maeda. So everyone's using his name, not just Carlos, everyone's using his name. Whether how much they train with him, if they train with him at all, is a different story. But that was his biggest contribution. Like he was just borrowing, and so his name is being thrown in the press left, right, and center. Oh, I train with Maeda because everyone wants to be his student. But he didn't actually do much when you think about it.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Power celebrity.
Yeah, and the power is exactly what it was, man, because everyone knew who he was. He was a celebrity in the Japanese community.
Well, it seems like it's something that's still leveraged to this day. Like if you look at popular names like Gracie Jiu Jitsu, like just by throwing that Gracie Jiu Jitsu name,
huge.
It gives, like, I know when I was in West Virginia, one of the martial artists there, I think at the time he was like a blue belt, like Gracie Jiu Jitsu, and that was like the biggest school in the area. But just because that name recognition is very strong. But I wonder now, like, as time goes on, the Gracie name is probably going to start fading away a little bit, as far as, because it's no longer as big in like in the news, because before we had Royce Gracie and
Yeah.
you had Henzo, and they were at the forefront of MMA in the UFC and in Pride. But now I think you have Neiman Gracie and Chrome, but it's not the same. They're not the standout stars like that they used to be.
Yeah.
So because I know you might tell someone, oh, like Royce Gracie, they'll be like, who? I was like,
Yeah.
oh God damn it.
I know you have to explain that. So it's crazy to explain that. But like it just like I think that 10, 15 years ago, just by having that surname, you would probably increase like $50,000 to $100,000
for sure
on your purse just by having that last name.
I
And
know
Pride, just by being like your purse is already double.
I know, like when I actually grappled Henry Gracie, when I beat him, this was like 2003.
Yeah.
I made a website, or my brother made the website, Avalon Defeats Gracie, and we were marking the hell out of that thing. That brought a lot of traction to the gym, because people were searching Gracie.
Yeah.
And you beat a Gracie? Oh my God.
Yeah. But you got to give credit to them. Like it's pretty incredible what they did. Because like of course we come across as haters because we're challenging some of the story.
Yeah.
But when you think about it, it's a pretty incredible story because they have a very unusual culture they created within the family. Like this, I call it a Spartan culture. Like it was a big family, a lot of kids, and they're all training. They all ate the same diet. Like it was like boot camp, man. Like they grew up within that boot camp. I admire that. Like I'm not saying that I would want to grow up like that, but there's just something to be admired about the discipline and resolve that Carlos and Helio had to create something for themselves.
Yeah.
I don't admire the methods. I say this in the book. Like, I don't admire how they did it, but the ambition, the resolution to like, we're gonna do it. And I think Royce, he gives a great quote. He was like, that's how my dad was. We're going to do something. We're not going to wait. We're going to do it now. We're going to do it our way. And that's the kind of guy he was. And that's what got us here. Without that resolution, that resolve of doing things the way they wanted to do it, I don't think MMA would have existed. Not as in the UFC. It would have existed like Shuto always existed in Japan. MMA was not invented in Brazil, but it became popular through that particular lineage. Brazil, Gracie's, UFC, Royce, and so on, right? I think they were the right people for the job. I don't think that anyone else could have done it.
Well, they executed a brilliant plan with how the first UFC was made with Horion and
killed it. Yeah,
getting Royce in there instead of using Hickson or whatnot. Yeah. So like, it was very well planned, and like you said, a lot of ambition, and they had to grind their way up. From the little I know of it. Yeah. Horion was first a lawyer, and then he was working with, local people in the garage, the Gracie garage and all that. So, people are like, oh, they got lucky. Man, those dudes grinded hard to get where they're at.
100%. No one can take that. And not only that, but the vision, man. Like sometimes, like I'll be 39 in a week. I mean, sometimes I'm like, there's not, I'm saying, like, there have been moments in my life, Dave, where I'm like, I know exactly. Where to go. Just, when I was in competition mode. Yeah. Obviously, in my life, like I see a lot more options. It's like, okay, I'm going to do this and that. But, with them, there's a theme. Not all family members, it's a big family, obviously, but like a lot of the ones we know of, at least, because they stuck to it. There was a theme. There was a resolve. We're going to do it. We're going to do it this way. And pretty much a big portion of the family lives off of jiu-jitsu. When you think about it, they stuck to it. And it's pretty impressive because, like, it's hard to find a family where half the family is working more or less in the same profession. Yeah. And it's a big family. It's so big. Hobson Gracie, the patriarch of the family, like, he doesn't know. He doesn't even know his name. Like, he admits it. Like, he doesn't know his family. He doesn't. Like, we had one of our historians, like, knew way more about who was son of who than the patriarch of the family. They're like, I got a lot of grandchildren, man. Like, that's how you would say, because it's such a big family. But, like, so many of them stuck to jiu-jitsu because now it's easy to stick to it because it clearly is very profitable. Yeah. But at the time when it wasn't, there was no money to be made in the 70s and 80s from jiu-jitsu. And that's what's so impressive. They stuck to it at a time when no one gave a shit about jiu-jitsu.
I think it says a lot about the power of the martial arts because it's not just like a profession. Like, for example, on my father's side of the family, a lot of engineers because they're from Venezuela. They do like oil refinery and stuff. Well, before they blew up the country, but so I had like my dad's an engineer, my grandfather was an engineer, my uncle was an engineer. Well, my uncles, many of them were. Even my aunt is an engineer. So naturally, profession for me was supposed to be engineer. I graduated electrical. My brother's civil, but we broke off and we got into martial arts, right? And I think the main difference is that the martial arts as a profession is not just a profession. It's like you said, it's a culture, it's a way of being,
Yeah.
and it's a philosophy. Engineer is a job, right? There's no like culture or
outside of just your work
philosophy. I mean, yes, you have the understanding of mechanics and
and the love for the job. You can love your work,
but it's not the same, right?
Yeah.
So I think it's easier in the sense to spread that. Like for example, my brother, all of his kids are training martial arts.
Yeah.
Whether they're gonna work in the martial arts is another thing, but they're gonna be doing it. They're gonna be in it. So in one way or another, they're still gonna be involved. And knowing my brother, they're gonna be making their own gyms and all that. So,
100%, 100%. But like even that, like you mentioned, like so many engineers in your family, that's unusual. Like I don't have that in my family, for example. Like both my parents are teachers. I mean, they were athletes when they were younger, but there's not a single martial artist in my family. Like everyone's got a completely different profession. I think most families are like that. But I think it's unique, man.
I think it was the older times. You would have more people following in the footsteps of your father and forefather.
Yes.
And it makes a lot of sense because who are you going to learn it from? You didn't have these major universities or this easy access to all this knowledge.
Yes.
So it makes sense, like if your father was a
carpenter,
you're going to learn from him because you're going to be mentored under him and he's going to teach you all the little tricks that you wouldn't learn normally. Yeah. And there's something to be said about that model because honestly, like that's the best way to learn, right? Because you're learning from someone who actually does the thing now and you need to get hands-on experience. Versus when we go through schooling nowadays, you're learning subjects that are all spread out because they're trying to give you this generalized knowledge. And then when you're in college, you're still learning from somebody, but he doesn't actually practice, right?
It's different. Yeah.
Like when you're in engineering, I'm learning from instructors that just teach particular subjects. It's questionable whether they even worked in the field. Yeah. You know what I mean? So I don't know. I like that mentorship model better because, for example, the marketing knowledge that I learned was from a mentorship model. I learned it from my brother and from Lloyd Irvin, and that is what I'm been able to make my living from. Yeah. I graduated from engineering, but I did like 9 months and then
and there's something
out.
Like that it's been lost because at the same time, building off of what you're saying is that we've gotten more freedom because now the internet, information universities have given us the freedom to choose to some extent, not complete, but we can mostly choose our professions, right? 500 years ago, that was not a choice. If your dad was a, blacksmith, that's what you're going to do. But there's something that's been lost too, because I think there was a bond that is created between a parent and a child when you're teaching them something that well. Like, there's something very special. Like me teaching, sometimes I'll teach my daughters privates. Something very special there, man. It's a bond because it's not just a profession that you love, but you're sharing your passion with the person you love the most in the whole world. And that creates a bond that's something very special. I just started learning how to play the guitar. All right, so I would dare say I'm almost a blue belt at guitar. Right? I started during quarantine. I can play some of my favorite songs, open chords. I can do that. So my daughter's been watching me. So they got the piano. So they're starting to play the piano, right? We got a piano teacher, whatever. And but now I got them a little tiny guitar, like one of those modified little baby kid guitars. So they're gonna get it. I get them tomorrow. So they have one because if you never know if it's gonna sit in the garage forever. So if they're really into it, I'll buy a second one. But I can't wait to be able to teach them how to play because that right there is going to create a bond between us that you can't replace. Man, there's nothing like it, man. Yeah. That's the best feeling in the world is being able to teach your child something. And if you can bond with that and if they like it and you have that bond, whether it's jiu-jitsu or guitar or blacksmith, whatever, man, that's something very unique. And I think we lost that because we become so independent. Our children are so independent. People have become so independent. And there's so many options that some of that bond between parent and child is kind of like, all right, bro, you're 18, go. Yeah. Doing what, Dad? I don't know, figure it out. Yeah. That's kind of how it is. And I'm not saying that the other way is way better, but I'm saying that we've gained some things and then we've lost others with the modern world. That makes any sense.
Yeah, and I'm not totally crapping on the current educational model because you might.
Oh, we can crap on it, man. Let's face it, it's failing.
But there's some good things about it. But overall, I would like the mentorship model better. But it doesn't necessarily mean that I have to be mentored by my dad or by my mom.
Yes.
Because you might just end up where you don't like that. If my dad was an engineer and I'm just not a math guy, you can't really get into engineering if you're not into math. And some people, they just don't got it. And it's not like a fault of them. It's just what it is.
It's their mind.
But I feel like then you should mentor under somebody else. You know what I mean? But I do think like you're saying that ideally in a parent and child that there should be something they both have in common that they can jam to, you know, whether it's music or it's art or anything. Yeah.
It breaks my heart when I see like parents that don't have anything to bond their kids. I'm like, man, what are you doing? Just feeding them?
Yeah.
Like, congratulations, that's great, you know. But that's kind of how I feel like some parents got. I'm not to shit on people, but they think their job is like, okay, breathing, good, pooping, peeing, eating, sleeping, good. Like, wait a second, man. Like, you're supposed to teach them. Yeah, it's pretty much. It's not just feeding them. Like, there's a lot more involved, man. They're about to face the world, and what I do is like I try to like the lessons that I've learned in life. Yeah. Like, I kind of had to learn the hard way, man. Like hanging my head against the wall. Like, okay, this doesn't work. Let's try this way, right? I try to teach my kids those lessons. Like, okay, you don't make the same mistakes Daddy making. This is how it is, and you're gonna try this way. I'm telling you right now, it doesn't work. This is what you got to do. You'd be surprised, man. They listen. To get my 7-year-old daughter off her iPad is not easy. But when I start giving her life advice, you'd be surprised, man. They lock their eyes on you. They're listening because it's like they're ready for that relationship. It's like it's their children are naturally programmed to listen to their parents and trust their parents. If you tell them 2 + 2 = 5 and you keep saying that, kids will believe you, man. Like they'll believe anything you say. You have to take advantage of that and use that as a something positive. Like give your experience to them, create those bonds because that's what they expect. It's almost like they're expecting that of parents. I feel like, and I think a lot of like I'm not saying I'm perfect. Everyone's flawed, but we've lost a lot of that. A lot of times, like okay, go on your iPad, forget it. Just you leave me alone so I can watch my TV show, and you can go on your iPad. But there's not a lot of real interaction, quality time between parent and child. I feel like in the modern world.
The whole iPad for kids thing. Like I don't have kids yet. I've seen my brother's kids. It's a real thing. It's
like crack for children.
Yeah, but I mean, it's not just for children. Everybody does it.
Me too. Yeah.
You're on your phone. You're
all
like,
the time.
Oh, yeah, I'm having dinner. Oh, what's going on? Oh, this. Oh, yeah. Okay. And it's like, man, like
it's a leash.
It is a leash, and for children, it's particularly addictive. Even if it's just like my brother has the kids on all like educational games, but still fixated on it. But at a certain point, it's like, yeah, we got to detach from this. So there's like curfews.
You have to. You can set the screen time. You can log the phone. Exactly. The thing turns off.
And then they ask, Mommy, I want to unlock more time. Like, no, you're done. Like, God damn it.
It's exactly like a little cry. I told you, it becomes an addiction because you get addicted to the endorphins. And I think we talked about this in one of the podcasts, but they have a new category in psychology. It's called attention engineering. You ever hear about that?
No, but I can totally get what's going on.
It's a field, and they basically, social media, that's what they are. Like they have figured out all the loopholes in your mind on how to grab your attention and keep it for as long as they can. Everything from sound volume to the font, color of the font, how you edit videos, like all of that plays a role in how they grab and hold on to your attention. So imagine game developers at the level of, EA Sports or whatever, like these huge companies with billions of dollars for a budget. They got it down with science. Manipulating a 4-year-old, it's a piece of cake.
Yeah.
No, right? And there's a lot of that going on. And I mean, I'm guilty of it too. Like I'm on my phone all the time. But I think that, we would all do well taking a step back from that. I'm not leaving it alone. I like my phone, don't get me wrong, but like taking a step back.
For sure. That I thought we talked about this before, but there's an episode of South Park that essentially goes over the whole model of how you make a game addictive.
Yeah.
And it was funny because it was making fun of the Canadian government use the game to fund their government or whatever.
Yeah.
But it essentially talks about that, attention engineering.
Yeah.
But it is a real thing, and I think like children are susceptible,
yes.
or more susceptible than anything because their brains are ready to receive.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So they'll soak up everything, whether it's books or videos or games or whatever. Yeah. And it's kind of like, I can get so much knowledge fast here, and you just want me to like sit down and read a book or something. It's like
it's an effort.
Yeah,
it's a quick reward.
Yeah,
and I don't know. I think I mentioned this in one of the podcasts. It might have been here. I can't remember. But like it's in prehistory, you kill an animal, you're the hero of the village for weeks. You kill like yes, we got meat. For that, it's a big deal, man. Like I've never bow hunted, but I imagine with a prehistoric bow or a spear, it would be mad. With a compound bow, I'm pretty sure it's hard. Imagine back in the day. It's a huge achievement. Yeah. Imagine how that made you feel. feel good. You want to do it again. You want that feeling of feeling like a superhero in the village when you go back, right? For example, all right. And with a video game, you get that reward by pressing. You know, I deleted Clash of Clans from my phone. Finally, I played that game for 5 years. I know I'm talking shit here, but like, I deleted it because this is when I deleted it. I was in a park, and I'm walking the dog, and I see a guy, and he has it on the table right, at the park, and he's got his iPad, and he's clearly playing a game. He's going like this. And that's all he's doing. He's just going up and like just like pressing whatever he's doing. And he probably is getting gold coins or points or something. So he's getting rewarded. And I'm like, man, that's what video games are. It's like a little dose of crack. And you're just getting rewarded for nothing. And you becomes addicted because why would you work hard? If you're gonna read like dense literature, like it's an effort. It's hard. You're gonna get past like some of these, like it's not easy to read. Right? It's an effort. You got to think. You got to interact with the author. It's an exercise of the mind, and you're going back and forth. Why would I do? And then you get a reward at the end. You understand what he means. Like, oh, I never thought of that. You get the reward, right? But it's an effort to get that reward. Whereas with games or movies and Netflix or whatever, you're getting bombarded with stuff, and you're not working for it because it's just like it's just digested for you. But the result is you lose the true treasure, which is learning the lesson, because it's not. You're getting rewarded for nothing. So there's no real effort in things, right? That's why I'm not being overly critical of people who play video games and watch, because I do too. But I think it's, like I said, it's something we need to learn how to dose, I feel like.
Yeah, and I think now, with how good the graphics are for games, it kind of takes away some of your imagination too.
100%.
Because like you're saying, it's kind of like someone is regurgitating something that's already
their
been
mind.
digested.
That's their mind. That's not yours.
Yeah,
you're not
like,
interacting.
You just open your mouth. There's everything. You don't have to imagine anything. Everything. Because when I look back at the old days, like when I played like Super Mario or like Zelda, and it was like the 8-bit characters. Like in my mind, I remember it differently. I remember like as a kid, like you kind of imagine
it's so much better than the graphics actually
was, and you could imagine characters differently. You know. Like I remember I was reading a book. It was like The Outsiders, and I remember I imagined certain characters to be different races, and then I saw the movie. I'm like, oh, this guy was white. I thought he was a black kid, or whatever. And but I colored it my own way, right? So that was like me exercising imagination. But like you said, like when everything's already put out in super perfect detail, it's like you don't have to imagine anything. So it's like your brain's just like.
When it's going to be all over is when they finally create a headset that is, because I've tried some of the VR headsets. They're not that, they start hurt your eyes after a while, right? You ever try one of those? Those Oculus Rift? Like after a while, I mean, the ones I tried, they get dizzy after a while. Technology is not there yet, but imagine like 20 years from now where it's going to be, where you are inside Lord of the Rings or whatever it is that you're playing, like, and you are a character in there and you're actually killing, dragons and what. It's over, man. Like people are not going to want to eat. They're just going to be playing the game. There's a South Park. There's a South Park episode for every great lesson in the modern world. Like there's a South Park episode, but there's one that were just like they don't leave and all they do is like play games and get really fat. And Cartman's gonna poop, and then his mom comes over and like a little bucket he poops in it. He doesn't stop playing.
That's how it is for some people.
It is.
It's pretty bizarre. Like there's people like in South Korea that die playing video games because they forget to go to the bathroom or drink water.
The study of the mouse that does that, like it gives like they have a little. It gives a little kick of endorphins whenever it presses a button, and it feels so good that it keeps pressing the button over and over and over and over and over and over. One day it just collapses because it forgot to eat and drink because it's so high off of the pleasure that it forgot about everything else. Right?
Yeah, it's nuts. So like this technology is a double-edged sword, In one way, it's leveraged us obviously to become the
masters
top,
of the planet.
Masters of the planet, But at the same time, as we lean more into it, it's becoming a crutch.
It is, and I wonder if we're happier. That's the question I always ask. Because don't get me wrong, I don't want to get rid of anything I have, but I do ask the question: are we better off in terms of our well-being? My guess is that we're not. I don't know if there are enough studies on anxiety and depression in the 1950s, but from what I understand, it's going up. That's my understanding of it. But I'm not too familiar to say, it's the same. It's always been this way, and we're just acting like old man right there complaining about how the better days. But I don't want to sound like that guy, right? But I do feel that there has been an increase of how people are looking for validation outside of themselves to feel good. Like I need the world to approve me. versus I approve of myself. And I don't hand that power to anyone. That is my power to appreciate who I am and how I feel, right? And I think when you hand that power to someone else, the result is that you create a lot of because now you need other people to approve of you, right? And I wonder if like the turning the world into a global village, right, making the world so much smaller, if it hasn't created that side effect of like you just more needy of validation. Whereas before, you got a pat on the back once a day or once a week and be like, oh, I'm good enough. Now you need one every 15 seconds if people aren't liking your pictures. Oh, fuck, am I good enough? Am I good looking enough?
Yeah.
Am I smart enough? Am I making enough money? And I'm not sure that element was there when my parents, because they didn't have cell phones. I could be wrong. I don't know. But I think we've never compared ourselves to people as much as we do now is what I'm trying to say. And that has a negative effect.
I definitely agree with that, right? I think if we went like 1993, 95, just before internet started to burst, right? We had a good mix of, there was a good amount of technology, but you didn't have that awareness of everything going on in the world at once, right? When you had news, it was local news. Unless it was like a war or like a meteor crashed, you wouldn't know what's going on in Korea or Australia. Like that wasn't in your circle, and you didn't have cell phones where you could look up. So, you called people on a phone. And sometimes there were rotary phones. Like people like, what the hell's a rotary phone? Like, I used them as a kid, So like you didn't have instant access to everything. So most of your life experience was based on what you actually saw, right? And not so much on like what I saw on social media. So your circle of influence was much smaller. Your local community, right? I feel that that's a much easier way to function versus, like you said, when you're on social media, you have to compare yourself to the world.
Yeah.
Man,
it's a high standard.
It's a super high standard.
High standard to me.
Because there's so many super exceptional people at whatever you're going to look at. Whether it's a beautician or as an artist or a musician or like an engineer. Anything. Like there's outliers everywhere. And like you get to see them all the time because guess what? They're the most popular because they're the outlier.
Yes.
And if you're like Joe Schmo, you're like, man, I suck. Like this guy like jumps like 20 feet and he can do this and I'm here like at nothing.
Yeah.
So like you're constantly being undermined every time you look.
And not only that, like, there's one thing about social media that's pretty consistent is how dishonest it is. I was like, there's this a friend of mine in Canada, he's always sending me like pictures of like hot girls. And he'll be like, oh man, look at that dog, such a beautiful breed, right? And I was like, just joking. We're not looking at we're looking at the girl, right? And he sends me this page of this girl. She has like God knows how many, like 1 million followers. I mean, it's just her doing yoga poses, but in every single one of the poses, her ass is towards the camera. And it's a beautiful ass, like it's like those majestic pieces of it. And I'm like, wow. And you're just like, you're a man. You can't not stare. It's impossible not to. She's beautiful. But the quotes are great. Look within yourself to find true happiness. It was just like some of that motivational crap. And I'm like, do you self-delude yourself to the point where you actually believe what you're saying? Does anyone believe what you're saying? Clearly, your following has to do with your looks, not the fact that you're a beautiful person inside. Because I can't even see who I are inside because certainly not coming across through your pictures.
Yeah.
But and it's a very fake environment. Like people who don't own a yacht will take a picture in one and like act like they like that's not you, bro. That's you just. I think, what did I see this? Like
I think Lloyd just posted something like that because people are jealous of imaginary lives that are not even being appreciated.
Not even real.
They're not even real, dude.
I think there's a company in Russia where like it's a fake jet and you can go inside and take pictures and just act like you're flying a flying jet. And it's just for your Instagram. So you walk in and you're acting like you're just looking, just thinking about all the billions you have, in a private jet. It's not a real jet. And you take the pictures in it and then they charge you for that. That's kind of what we're moving towards, It's just very strange.
Everybody's trying to posture and cloud. Like it's funny because we went scuba diving, right?
Yeah.
And we're in Miami or in Key West, but this guy comes in and he looks like he's right off finishing his latest rap album. Yep. He's got these giant gold chains, got tats everywhere. He has 2 girls that look like they went to the same plastic surgeon because they have these big old butts, same lips, shape, everything. And they're all going scuba diving. And he's scuba diving he was like snorkeling, or they had like a hybrid for like beginners.
He took the chains off to scuba dive, otherwise he'd sink.
He had the chains on, and he's like, crazy. What are you doing? Like, what's going on here? Are we in real life? And it's like, and the girls, like, they started crying, like, because they got freaked out when they went to dive or whatnot.
Because it wasn't like they thought it was going to be. It's real life.
Yeah. And it's like, Jesus Christ, man. Like, and they're like, oh, wait. And they were asking people, oh, let me take a picture for the gram and this and that. I'm like, that's what this is really all about. You know what
it's
I mean?
100%
Like, you're
that's
just
why
trying
they
to
do
look
it.
cool. You know, it's like, Jesus, man. Just like,
enjoy the moment.
Yeah, like, that's why, like, my brother was asking me, oh, what camera should I get for the scuba diving? Because we went to dive. Like, honestly, man, I have a little cheap one because I could use one hand to do it. Because I want to enjoy the experience. Because if you want to be like a good ocean videographer, you need to have a rig that's two-handed. It has like these strobe lights here. And it's pretty much a full job of you operating this thing. Now I'm not diving, right?
Now you're filming.
Now I'm filming,
yes.
Right? And like, I came to dive, right? You know, like, I take like selfies and stupid little pictures.
Of course, yeah.
Just like for whatever, you know, but that's like 5 seconds of a 60-minute dive.
Yeah.
Right? I want to dive more than anything, you know, and the more stuff you put in, stuff like, just get something like your GoPro, you know, mount it on your head and you're good.
You can forget about it.
You can forget about it and just enjoy the actual experience of it because it's a really good thing to disconnect from. And there's no phones underwater, so it's great.
It's beautiful. That's one reason I like flying, because I fly so much, and everyone's like, Ron, I don't know how you do it. I'm like, I kind of like it. And I was like, why? It's like, I'm on airplane mode on the flight, so I actually read without being interrupted. No one interrupts me. All right? That's one of my biggest peas in life. I was like, I get interrupted all the time with my phone. And I mean, it's work, so I have to do. I don't mind. But it happens so much, it's hard for me to focus. Like, writing the book was an unusual experience for me because I would make a point of putting my phone like upstairs and I'd be downstairs. So there's no way I can check it because if it's next to you, you're going to check.
Yeah.
So I have to have my phone far away from me. And I'll take like for the next 4 hours, I'm just going to type. And that's how I got it done relatively quickly because I wasn't being interrupted all the time. So it made me think that I want to just have like an automated response on my text messages and whatever. It's like, hey man, here's my email. You know, because I think I'd free up my time so much if I weren't on my phone. Because it does, you know, really, you know, become like a leash.
Yeah, I tell you, no BS time management. Dan Kennedy.
I know you told we had this. I know. I gotta start reading some of these. I end up like reading the same stuff over and over, but I gotta still like, especially the time management thing would be very helpful.
For you, for the phone, like if I'm gonna sit down and write something or do some creative work, where you know how it is, if you get interrupted, your flow is gone, right?
Done.
Yeah.
It takes like 30 minutes to get it back.
So you got killed, right? So if I'm gonna do something like that, phone on mute, and just put it face down away so I can't see the screen light up or anything, and then you just do like a 4-hour block or 2 hour, whatever your time is, you know, like depends on how long you can go, and then afterwards, okay, turn it on and then check your things. Like we've been conditioned so much that when you hear ding,
oh yeah, it's conditioning. 100%.
Because you know there's an endorphin that goes, oh, what, did someone like something? Oh, sweet.
Yeah.
You know, but if you had that thing off and you just work, man, it's so much easier. And then it's very rare that you have to pick up a call that is going to be urgent. Yeah. Where when I mean urgent, to me,
it's 1 out of 20. That's
it's like, a life or death situation.
Yeah, that's never. Yeah,
that's never right. So everything else
can wait.
Right? There's very rare. Like I haven't happened to me. You know, knock on wood, that I've had a life or death situation that needed to be addressed immediately, right? If someone calls, oh, I need the help with this project, whatever, like, usually go wait an hour.
Yeah, I'm with you.
Or a couple hours, and then I get back. And I remember some people getting upset at me, oh, man, you don't answer my text right away. I'm like,
people get mad.
Yeah, I'm like,
they get upset.
Man, I'm doing stuff. You know, I'll get to it. I answer every phone call, every email, you know, but, you know, on my time. Because like you said, like when you're doing creative work, you need that flow state. And it takes, like you said, usually like 30 minutes or so to start getting into the vibe. And okay, now we got a good train of thought.
Yes, you want to type fast because you don't want to lose it. Yeah.
And now I'm flowing, you know? But like every time someone yanks you out of it, it's hard. It's just like with competing, you know? Like if you're grappling, you need to be in that flow state too.
Yes.
I know, like my last tournament I ever did was at IBJJF. It was 2013. It was after ADCC.
Nogi Worlds.
Worst I've ever done in competition ever. And I wasn't in the right state of mind.
Yeah.
I remember because my brother wasn't there to coach me because he had to do something else. So I was there solo. Not recommended. I think you should always have a coach. I didn't have a coach. I'm like, fine.
Yeah, especially if you're used to having one.
Yeah. I'm like, you know, I'll just do it on my own. I'm good. So I went there, and I remember I guess you have to wear the right shorts, and I had the shorts that I thought were like approved for no gi.
Oh no,
They weren't.
They're
So I got on the mats, and then they're like, "Oh, you're gonna get DQ'd." I'm like, "What?" Because those are the wrong shorts. I was like, "Oh crap!" So now I'm running, trying to find shorts. Oh, I gotta buy this. Okay, and now I get on the mats, and I'm just worrying about getting DQ'd. I'm like, "Oh, I want to get here." And then so when I got on the mats, like my mindset was totally off. I remember I was fighting this guy, and he kept putting me like in 50-50 ankle locks.
Oh.
And they were deep.
Yeah.
And I wasn't even thinking about it. And like I remember he was belly down, full extension like this. And I was looking at it, I'm like, that's kind of bad. But I was so disconnected from the moment.
You couldn't react in time to do something about it.
Yeah, no, unfortunately, I mean, I was able to eat them. You know, I'm like, okay. And then
I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, but like I was just not there.
Yeah,
you know?
I know exactly what you're talking about. If your mind is not there. This is why I always say this. Like, it's just kind of like a new realization. I'm pretty sure at some point we talked about it, but like how important your social environment is for fighting. Because what puts me off is my personal life being out of whack, like, and it distracts me, and I have a hard time getting into that flow. When everything else is working in my life, I feel like I'm. It's not that I'm getting into flow. I'm in that flow. Yeah. I don't leave that state of flow where my focus is what I got to do. But if other things are distracting me, if I got problems at home or anything like that, it keeps pulling me out of my flow, and then it's hard for me to get in again, right? And I've had those. I have both in my life, and me, performance-wise, it's night and day. How it is when you're in that zone, when you're in that flow of training, of competing, of like reacting to the footlock before it's there, right? Versus like mid-roll, you're like thinking, yeah, I got to pay that one bill later. You know, it literally sometimes these thoughts, they interrupt. They're in the middle of your training. Yeah. Right? And they should not be, right? You got to just, it's hard to do because adult life responsibilities are that's what adult life is. But I think that's one reason why competitors are like, it's almost like by necessity, they're very irresponsible. It's because they don't want to have any other concern in life distracting them. Maybe that's the way it should be. Because most competitors I know, they're like children. They don't know how to do anything. They don't want to learn either. It's just they're very focused on what they're doing and nothing else matters.
Well, that's, in the ideal world, you have a coach or you have someone handling all these things for you as a professional athlete, right? You have your nutritionist, you have your therapist, you have your, your coach for jiu-jitsu or martial arts or MMA, whatever. Everybody's handling something, so you can just focus on you, right? Like, okay, I just need to be able to report to each of these coaches and get what I need from them and then sleep, right? I mean, that would be like if I was programming a machine, that's how I would want it, right? It shouldn't have to worry about like, okay, work at 9 to 5 and then come home and feed the dog and then do like, now you're getting distracted, like you're saying, instead of just focusing purely on being in preparation for your event. But we're human. We need some sort of distraction, but they have to be like managed, I always tell people like for like fights and whatnot, we talk about visualization and stuff. Those are all great, but when it comes close to the fight camp, it's like when the fight's about to happen, like a week out, I say stop doing that. Yeah, because you're gonna be like going double time.
It's so true. Like when I get closer, I want to get away from it a little bit. My trick is, and it always works, is like I'll try to go to the movie theater the night before. It always works because like for some reason, I still get excited about going to the movie theater. Watching a movie at home is just not the same. I like the smell of popcorn. It's something exciting. It was like the night before I went to ADCC, that's what I did. I went to the movie theater. What did I watch? I think it was Spider-Man that was playing. It was the very first Spider-Man. And it was great, man. It was great. Like, it was just like one of those, like, get your mind off of jiu-jitsu completely for 2-3 hours. It's just like this, and I think you need that because it's like watching the highlight reel of your opponent too many times. Yeah. I mean, you shouldn't watch it, period. But like you should study your opponent a little bit, but you got to stop it because if you keep watching it every day, it gets into your head too much. You gotta. I normally recommend fighters watch their opponent's beginning of camp. Yeah. We know what the camp is. Once you know what the camp is, done. Yeah. Don't touch it again.
And like you're saying, you just need to be aware of what they bring, right? You don't need to be a super specialist, understanding every nook and cranny of their game. Like you said, because now I'm focusing on what they're doing instead of what I'm going to do, right? So I always tell people, have an awareness of what the opponent is doing. Like, oh, he's really good at leg locks. Okay, that means my camp should include leg lock defense and prevention, all that. But like, watching highlight reels is just going to...
I did it once. I'm never doing it again because it turned a chump into a superhero. Yeah. because that's what a highlight reel is. It makes them look way better than they actually are.
Yeah, and then you're overestimating somebody,
Yeah.
and you're second guessing yourself.
Yeah.
But like the movie theater, I don't go to the movie theater, but I do watch movies.
Yeah,
right? Like
it's a great
the day
distraction.
before the fight, or watch TV. Just something where that's the one time you do want to just like blank out.
Like Tiger King.
Yeah.
Something that's like it's like addicting. Like you can't stop watching. You know it's garbage, but you can't stop watching it. I watched that whole thing in like 2 days, I think. It was embarrassing. Couldn't stop. You have you seen it?
Yeah. It's
crazy.
Of course, I think they perfectly timed that release.
For the quarantine, because it was very
just
well
the beginning
timed.
of quarantine. Everybody's like, well, I guess we're watching this crazy bastard. Yeah.
And the best thing about that TV show was that like every single person he interviewed is an absolute lunatic. There's no one normal there. That's what's so great. It's like they live in this altered reality. I think the opening quote in the first episode was like, "Oh yeah, but the monkey people, the monkey people are crazy." And I'm like, "Oh god, the monkey people are crazy." Got it. And then no one else, right?
They're all totally out of
monkey
mind.
people. Like, I don't know what are you talking about? What are the monkey people?
Yeah, the one guy who had the whole cult with the tigers. It's like the Doc something or other. It's like Jesus. Like there's some weird.
The world is an interesting place.
Yeah, it is.
Dave, I think we're good, man. We probably hit an hour. We didn't time it today. It's probably about an hour.
Yeah, we hit an hour there. So
Man, it was fun. It's been a minute. We got to do this now that you're back. COVID is kind of over, not over, but we're not freaking. At first, everyone's freaking out. We don't even want to film episodes because like Dave for sure has COVID. I don't want to get infected. So
if I have to feel like this. Well, I'll tell you, my mother, she got COVID-19.
Yeah, I had it too.
Yeah.
I got it at some point. Yeah.
She had it bad. She went to the hospital. They had her in isolation for like 3 weeks. But she also had 3 major comorbidities. She was overweight. She's over 60. She has like a form of cancer, like CLL. So like they were trying to be very sheltered, but they just made one mistake, which was they had an AC guy come into their place to repair the AC. Turns out the guy wasn't wearing a mask. She wasn't wearing a mask. So they let their guard down for a moment. Later on, like a couple of days later, she ends up having a hard time breathing, take her to the hospital, walked out. That guy ended up going to the hospital. His wife passed away. So that one exposure, done. Right?
Yeah.
But they were more worried for my father because he was going through chemo.
Yeah.
He got it, just lost his smell. That was, and he had some hard time sleeping, I think. That was it. It just affected them very differently. But my mom had a history of having pneumonia, and that's what she got.
Yes.
Really
Those
bad.
are the ones that are most at risk.
Yeah,
Right?
and she had it really bad. But fortunately, she's already back home now, pulled through. But I think at the end of the day, not to get too political or anything here, we're not going to be able to wear masks forever.
No.
Right? Like, unless that's what everybody wants to play around with. Like, we're going to wear a mask year round. Because, look, it started some people are saying March, at least the lockdowns, but it was here earlier.
Yeah.
Right? And now we're in September, about to enter October, and we're still having this. So at some point, either we're going to accept that this is what it is, or we're going to continue.
I think it's just like, when the Spanish flu came along, it was very similar. People were wearing masks.
Yeah.
And they were, I don't know how long it went on for, but that was a world pandemic. It was not so different. Almost exactly 100 years ago. Eventually, the Spanish flu became part of life.
Yeah.
And now it's still around, but we don't stop going to work because the flu is out there. I think COVID was just going to be another strain of the flu that we're going to have to deal with. But like, I don't think that this is permanent. Like for a minute there, I was like, man, is this how life is going to be? I don't think so. I think things are going to bounce back to normal. I mean, maybe 6 months. I don't know. Like, who can predict? But it's not life to be like, you can't hug people anymore.
No, it can't work that way, right? And what they have done around this country, just in this country alone, is horrifying. When I went to the Keys, those people were really frustrated. Apparently, they blocked the road so that nobody could get in or out of the Keys. Well, I guess certain people were allowed. If you were from the Keys, you were able to move in and out, but you couldn't visit. That's a tourist economy. Yeah. So guess what happened to them? They got ravaged.
Yeah.
You know? So, I mean, there's a lot of places like that are just really frustrated.
Yeah, well, people, as I say, they're prioritizing health over everything else. And I'm not trying to be, it's a serious threat. I understand that. But I still believe that a global depression is a more serious threat because it's going to impact the disease and the recovery of people as well. Because if we're broke, we can't really treat people either. So it's not like Corona is going to get better if we enter a global depression. The choice is not between Corona and global depression. It's between Corona or global depression plus Corona.
Yeah, exactly.
Those are the two alternatives.
Yeah,
So.
it's not going, like you said, it's going to be like another seasonal thing that's going on. And the best way about this, be healthy.
Yeah.
You can't be healthy if you're hiding away somewhere.
No one taught, it's like to me is the most, I think this is the reason why it's never talked about, is because it's free and it's cheap and it's efficient. Be healthy.
Yeah.
Like sleep well, get some sun, work out, eat healthy. Immune system strong, chances are it'll fight off the virus. That's your best weapon against this thing, right? It is your immune system. It's not any vaccine or the hospital or the ventilators. That's a plan B, man. Plan A, be healthy. It's like jiu-jitsu.
Yeah. I
get this question, every day I get a question from a white belt. They go like this: how do I get out of a triangle? I'm like, bro. And I explain. So I tell you, the best solution is not to get out, don't get caught, right? And they don't like that answer. But it's similar with this virus. I think the best alternative, the best option we have is not to get caught in the triangle. Don't get caught in the Corona triangle. Like, don't get caught, and then you're good. Once you're caught, okay, now you got a much bigger problem in your hands. And it's a simple solution: eat, sleep, eat healthy, sleep well. That's it. Sun, work out. That's it.
All the people I've known that have had serious, effect from it were all unhealthy. Right? They weren't as fit as they could be. Right. So I feel like that's anecdotal, but I think that's the best thing you can do, because you can't run away from it forever. Like you said, if we're sheltered in anymore, it's going to be a problem. It already is a problem for a lot of people.
We're printing money. The only reason the economies are bad is because the government's just writing everyone a check right now.
Yeah.
Right, and that's why we're getting by. But how long is that going to go on for? Government writing people's checks, printing more dollars. I don't know, man. I'm no economist, but I'm pretty sure there are consequences to that.
Absolutely.
All right, Dave, I got to go. Man, it was a pleasure. We'll do this again. We got to get a guest here at some point. I got some guys in mind. And but yeah, it was fun, man. Once again, I want to apologize to you guys about the documentary. But it's not on me, man. It really isn't. But the book is out. The book is good. You guys are going to like it.
And where do people find out about it, Rob?
CloseGuardFilm.com. You see how bad of a businessman I am? I don't even get the direct. CloseGuardFilm.com. That's where the film is going to be. Book's already out. We'll come out with some posters soon, too.
Yeah, but Instagram also is
Instagram is @CloseGuardFilm.
Gotcha. All right. Makes it easy.
All right.
All right, guys. We'll see you on the next one.
Ciao.